The Galaxy S3 is kind of a throwback to me. Back in the day it was the latest and greatest, the bee's knees, and had a huge screen. But of course now, that screen isn't so big, and Samsung is creating phones with 6.2 and 6.3 inch screens, which seem kind of mainstream. Anyway guys, my name is Ryan Thomas with Failtech, and today I'm going to be telling you about using an S3 almost half a decade after its release. Let's start off with the display. Back in the day this thing was huge, 4.8 inches for a screen, are you mad? Yeah, okay, 4.8 inches isn't huge nowadays, but the 720p Super AMOLED panel gets really bright, is really nice with punchy colours and deep blacks due to the OLED nature, and is just big enough that fits most people's desires perfectly well. It isn't the biggest and it's not the sharpest, which means multitasking and viewing fine text isn't going to be the greatest, but for £50 were you really expecting a better screen than this? Viewing angles also aren't great because it's an OLED panel, but it is fun to look at and it is fun to use, and that's something that I think you should really get in a phone. Playing games and watching videos was really nice on this 16:9 aspect ratio display, something that we take for granted now, but current phones and more modern phones are pushing towards a weird aspect ratio which does not conform to many standards, if any at all. Also, most of you will be turned off by the fact it's a 720p display, but I found it perfectly sharp enough for doing everyday tasks, especially using social media. And it doesn't take that much to power either. Of course, with the 720p display, it's going to take less power to actually drive, so your battery life is going to increase. And of course, it doesn't require as many pixels to push, meaning that you can use lower end chips and they'll run just fine. Let's talk performance. 2GB of RAM and an Exynos 4412 in-house dual-core chip on paper just really doesn't look that good, considering we've got 6 and 8 core chips with double or even quadruple the amount of RAM nowadays. But pair this phone with some good custom software from the likes of Lineage OS and you're going to get a really clean, really uncut experience. And I only mention custom software because the stock software that you get with this, which is your standard 4.4.4 KitKat, which is ages old at this point, just isn't that good. It masks such a good platform because this phone is capable, even at this age, to play some games and to watch some videos and to use social media, but it does make it a little bit difficult using the stock software because it makes everything clunky and laggy and the menus look dated and old and it just doesn't look like a good experience. But install that custom software and it's completely transformed. I recently got to install Lineage on one of these devices for a family member using Odin. Of course, it's a slightly different process than just doing it on a regular phone, and it worked well. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, and overall your experience is just improved so much. And because you've got that microSD expansion, you can increase the storage that is only 16 or 32GB and take that up with music, photos, videos, anything like that, and really improve the experience. Of course, you can't really overclock this system or put more RAM in it, meaning that you can't really play those high-end 3D games like Riptide GP2 or any high-end 3D games on this phone without expecting some crashing. The 2D titles and the cookie clicker type games do work well and they are going to run well, and I wouldn't expect many hiccups, although like I said, the stock software does crash a little bit in certain applications. Plastic, more plastic. This phone is riddled with plastic, and that may be one of the S3's worst downfalls. It's fair to say that this phone wasn't well built at the time, and it's certainly not that well built now, although the best thing about the removable back is that whilst it will get cracked up, you can go and buy a new one on eBay and replace it. Unfortunately, it's a little bit difficult to replace the rest of the phone's body. It's also quite funny to think that Samsung are making some of the best made phones in the industry, and to look back 5 years earlier, we've got something that was one of the worst built phones in the industry, competing against the likes of the iPhone 5 and the iPhone 4S, which had incredible build qualities. And now we've got like the Note 8, which is comparing to the iPhone 10, and overall I'd say the Note 8 was a nicer feel in the hand. It's funny how things change. According to iFixit, this phone is fairly easily fixable, and it doesn't surprise me because a lot of people will buy these in bulk used. They'll put a new screen in or fix some of the outer shell to make it look newer and sell it on for a profit because you see a 4.8 inch display and you kind of associate that with a well-made phone. The rounded edges kind of contrast with the square screen. If you kind of look at the rectangular screen and then look at the rounded edges and that power button, the body just kind of seems out of place from the front. That home button seems a little bit too small and kind of in the wrong place, and it's kind of weird to me, but it's just something I wanted to point out because even after all these years I can't get used to how this thing looks from the front. You won't find any protection like Ingress protection ratings here because it's just not that good, and you won't get a lot of grip either because of the weird crappy shiny plastic on the device. Kind of makes it a little bit difficult to hold. The S3's 8 megapixel sensor and f2.6 glass really isn't that good. At the time I think we thought it was kind of amazing, and looking back now it really wasn't that good. It shoots 1080p video at 30 fps, which isn't the best but is kind of good enough, and it's got the specs on paper to kind of push photos to Facebook. Instagram might be a bit of a push, and the 1.9 megapixel front camera again is a bit of a push. It's not really that good, is it? It's kind of in the meh. You know, you've got a camera, so be thankful, but it's not really that good enough to post any good photos anywhere. But I have to remind you of the price. £50 to get something like this really isn't that bad. Just one thing to note, if you're looking for a good camera phone, I would skip both this one and the S4, because the S4 has a similarly bad camera, and go straight to the S5, which has an impeccable camera for its age. The 2100 mAh battery is easily removed due to that plastic rear housing that can be taken off with ease, and you can replace the 2100 mAh cell with a 2200 mAh cell from Anker. Takes up the same space, you can use the same back, but it does improve the battery life a little bit, and because it's newer, it's going to supersede that old battery, which is going to be old and drained, and that probably has half of its life left. Due to the 720p screen and the rather small battery, you can expect anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours of screen on time. I was getting a full day, but not really using the phone that much, which is something that you kind of need to expect from a phone that's one, £50, and two, that has such a small battery for an Android phone. But don't expect a full day's heavy use from a tiny battery in a not so tiny smartphone. For those of you looking for a cheap and cheerful smartphone, I call this smartphone good enough. A lot of phones in the budget oriented sector will go for between £100 and £200, and then of course you've got the mid-range phones from 2 to 400 and the high end from 400 over. But this is £50, which means it doesn't even hit that budget threshold. So this is like ultra, super, mega budget, super Saiyan. And in my opinion, the fact that you can get over 8 of these for the price of like a good Samsung S8 on the used market is just nuts. And I feel like this phone puts a lot of things into perspective. You look at a phone that costs £50 and that has all of this, that has a camera, can download stuff from the App Store, can do plenty of tasks including social media, reading emails, that has a pretty good screen all things considered, and that has a battery that can be replaced and removed, and you get a device that actually looks pretty good. I would recommend this device to anyone who can get it on custom software. Anyone who's got it on stock software might find that it's a little bit clunky, but I know a bunch of you are smart enough to actually put the custom software on there, and it's going to completely drastically improve the user experience on this device. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. My name's been Ryan Thomas with Failtech. Please do like or dislike the video based on your thoughts, and put those thoughts in the comment section below. Also, please subscribe to me because it really helps me out, and I'm trying to get to 10k by April. And support me on Patreon if you like. Thank you so much, Ross, for supporting me on there. Anyway, again, I've been Ryan Thomas with Failtech, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.